Getting them involved and having them go tell the press why they were wrong about whether Apple was or wasn't going to die.
Evangelism comes from the Greek word of bringing the good news. So an evangelist believes he or she is bringing good news to other people. And that's what we were doing, bringing the good news of Macintosh.
The company realized that it was their customers that were going to save them, and they had all these passionate people, and how do I connect with them? The best way to connect with them is with another person. And Guy went out and connected with individuals.
I created an email list called the Evangelist, and that had good 45,000 subscribers. When the Evangelist found, or when I found people in the press who I thought were inaccurate or unfair, I let 45,000 of my closest friends know.
In my opinion, it actually was counterproductive because it got a lot of individuals focused negatively on the press. It became a gang squad where they would, someone would print something, whether it was true or not. If it was negative of the Apple, it seemed like this evangelist went after them in a big way and sort of made some enemies in the end.
The comparison I always make is like Tony Montana from Scarface. They're spraying the walls, their machine gun, pop, 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 and you're like, honey, sweetie, it's okay to have other computers that work in many ways just as well as the one that you're using. It doesn't diminish your experience at all.
It was a wonderful way to keep the community together when it was really feeling like it was falling apart. Apple had a bunch of bad CEOs, they had a bunch of bad products, but they had this wonderful community.
Well, they're just, they bleed 6 colors. Well, maybe not 6 colors anymore because the logo's not 6 colors anymore, but at the time they were bleeding 6 colors. It really was a religion, and it was a feeling of zealousness that transcends rationality, actually.
Well, they were about to start putting nails into the coffin and bury Apple and the Macintosh, but a funny thing happened on the way to the funeral. Steve Jobs showed up, and suddenly there is new energy, new direction, new black ink, and a stunning new product, the iMac.
It's been a great year, and we're not quite done with our fiscal year yet, but we've had 3 quarters, and we've managed to go from losing $1 billion the year before to actually making over $200 million during the first 3 quarters.
All of a sudden, the Mac platform's revitalized. I mean, there's a lot of reason now to choose Macintosh over Windows or Win95.
Apple's bigger than McDonald's. They're not going anywhere. We're already the David, but I think we will overcome the Goliath at some point.
Steve Jobs' report on the company's improved fiscal health was no doubt welcome news to Macintosh fans.
I thought the world's going to work out better than that, and it has. It's worked out fine.
We know what we've got because we can see the alternative. If Macintosh has disappeared, I don't think I'd be as happy, It wouldn't be the same.
It was on the brink of the grave, and we can all be grateful to Steve Jobs for resurrecting Apple as a viable company.
If you were to ask me what my 3 major influences were, they've got to be, my dad, John Lennon, and Steve Jobs.
He's the best. He is the Tom Hanks of CEOs.
I'm willing to follow him. I think that whatever he says is fine with me. You're great, Steve. I'll always love you.
And Steve said, let there be forgiveness for my people. My people have been down for too long. Great job.
Toward the end of the 90s, I started looking at the Mac. I knew that Steve Jobs had come back, and they started having life in them again. We were at Burning Man one year, and I had this vision pop in my head. Gillen was right. To have fun in our lives, we've got to get a Mac.
And I flipped. Every artist door in me sprang open again. And I said to Bruce, that's it. We have to get Macs. It's time to go back. It's really true. I walked into that store and looked at the machine and started to shake. And I realized I'm back with my community. I'm back with my friends. I'm back with all the other nutballs, just like me. And it's been a long time since I've been there. I was homesick. I'd come home.
Well, we're here at Swig Bar in San Francisco and holding my annual Macworld party. We partied it up to about 2 in the morning, about 5 hours straight of mingling with Mac users. I noticed how rich and vibrant the user community was online. I just imagine it's got to be 10 times better if you do it in person. As the Mac gets more popular and as things grow larger than just the core user group, the people that have been using it for 20 years are kind of starting to take a back seat to the people like myself that are growing up and switching from PC to Mac. People tend to not be as close niche as they were before, and even in early 2000, 2001, the landscape has changed greatly. So what I decided to do back in 2003 is start planning events to remember who we are as Mac users.
Now that Apple's more successful, the community is not quite as cohesive as it used to be. They were sort of sticking together in bad times. It's definitely changing.
It's kind of a pick your poison. So you want a lot of camaraderie, then you got to be in a company that might die. Sometimes near-death experiences make you have a better sense of camaraderie. It's probably true that there's less of a community. And the irony is that it's because Apple has been more successful. I would think that many people at Apple have a different attitude, that when you're that successful and you're that hot, I don't necessarily mean they're arrogant, but they certainly don't feel threatened.
They are separate from that community. They are not responsible for it, nor are they caretakers of it.
Sorry.
They've made efforts to throw some goods out to people or to, get some toys to the user groups in general, but it's really been little stuff. It's really been thanks, not let's go do something together. I don't think they've done very much together with user groups in years. Apple's a very secret company. It's a very private company. They do what they do, and when they're done, they tell you what you get. So it was this odd conflict at all times where the company would say, isn't this great? We'll help you use this. We'll make this happen. And the user community would grab it and say, isn't this great? Why doesn't it do this? And there would be a conflict that would actually cause some amount of anger among the two in some ways. It would be a very big conflict because the user groups were expecting more openness, and Apple was expecting more adoration and thanks, which is kind of an odd way of having followers, isn't it? So that community, I think, in some ways, pissed off Apple at times.
Oh, Apple? They could care less at this point. Why? It's not important to them. The corporations today, their community is basically what they control on their website.
Well, Apple's always had an interesting relationship with user groups. User groups had an element of unpredictability. It's been close and far.
I think the Mac community scares Apple to a certain degree because they don't know how to control these people. Apple's all about control now, and you really can't control the user group, although they are your frontline troops.
It's almost as if Apple had forgotten their own roots. You know how that happens? And I think it's sad. I don't think they do enough to support the groups anymore.
Well, I think that's really interesting because I think it's a natural evolution. I think those who are early adopters in anything, once it becomes mainstream or more people start using it, they feel left out. They feel left behind. I think that's an inevitable thing that happens in evangelist communities or small communities, that sort of bridging the gap for when things go mainstream is a difficult transition. That's it.
One of the big features on iMac, supposedly, Dave, is an idiot, never used a computer before, take it out of the box, 10 minutes, and you're up on the internet.
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
The internet assistant, setup assistant comes up and asks you, do you want to start to get on the internet? You say, yes.
It's amazing, though. I was here last year, and the web domination wasn't as obvious. This year, it's just so much about the web.
Well, there's been a change nationwide in user groups. People are not joining. Young people aren't joining because young people have now grown up with computers, and so there's nothing mysterious for them to learn, and they don't